I find it very interesting that with everything going on in the United States right now, with the upcoming election, the controversy of Clinton and Trump, and the utter divide that's going on in America, that we find ourselves in chapter 8 of Ecclesiastes. Why is that? Well, because chapter 8 deals largely with government. There's two overarching themes in chapter 8. The first one is this, that an unjust government is better than no government at all. And let me say that again to you. An unjust government is better than no government at all. The other theme in chapter 8 is this, that tyranny is better than anarchy. You think, just hold on to that truth for just a little bit. It's better to have a tyrant in control of a country, because at least there's some semblance of control, than there is to have no control at all in utter chaos. It's interesting, right? Now, normally in this study, I have gone verse by verse through the chapter and broken it down for you. But I'm not going to do it that way in this one. I'm going to do some overarching viewpoints on this, and I'm really going to find myself situated in Romans chapter 13, and I'll tell you why here in a second, okay? Now, you can divide chapter 8 into two sections. The first one is verses 2 through 6. And what you could put down for that is that God ordains human leaders in government, meaning that God is the one who puts these people in control, whether good or bad. God is the one in ultimate authority over human leaders and governments, okay? It's not out of his hands. It's not, oh man, if God doesn't come through, then this evil person's going to take office and we're done for. No, that's not how it works. God is the one who puts the leaders in the office, okay? And I know you would argue, well, then what's the point in voting if God's going to put them there? Well, because it's our duty to do this, okay? The second part is in verse 7 through 17. And it's this, is that God controls and will judge all human leaders and governments. So God will put them in power, but if they do evil, he will judge them for it. Okay? Now, I know you guys follow the news, and I follow the news, and I found myself in the last week or two, with all this health information coming out about Hillary Clinton. You notice she had Parkinson's, some type of neurological disorder. The Democrats saying that there's nothing wrong with her. She just faints every once in a while. It's pneumonia. You get the Republican side saying, no, clearly there's something wrong. She's wearing Parkinson's glasses. You can see the seizures. You can see the twitches and all this stuff. And you're just sitting back and you're just like, what is going on in our world? And then you got Trump on the other hand. Everybody calls him a racist and a sexist, and then Hillary Clinton calls all of his followers deplorables. And I still to this day, now you guys may have seen a soundbite of him saying something racist. I haven't seen anything come out of him being racist other than that they say that he's a racist man. But anyways, through this, there has been this staunch division in America on if one leader gets in, we're doomed. If the other one gets in, we're saved. And the other side views it the exact opposite. But what everybody needs to do is just pull back a little bit, understand that God's in control, that he ordains leadership over countries, and that what will be has been done, and that he has ordained it from the beginning of time. It's interesting too, because when you look at that second theme in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, where it says tyranny is better than anarchy, it reminds me of the book of Judges. And I know a lot of you have probably not studied the book of Judges, but the final verse in Judges is this. In those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. See, having an awful leader in office is better than no leader at all, because at least, like I said before, there is some semblance of control over the people. If every man does what is right in his own eyes, people will be dying left and right. There will be murder everywhere. Think about the divisions in cities and in states and in countries if there was no ultimate power leading the government, right? Very interesting. So what we're going to do here is I figured what we could start off by reading the first 6 chapters of Ecclesiastes, and I'm going to match it up with Romans chapter 13, okay? Verse 1. Who is like the wise man, and who knows the interpretation of a matter? A man's wisdom illumines him and causes his stern face to beam. What that means is that wisdom can bring light into darkness, that having wisdom from God, and we know that the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. So following God and understanding that he's in control brings wisdom to a matter and helps you interpret a dark situation. All right. So let's go to verse 2. I say, keep the command of the king because of the oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave him. Do not join in an evil matter, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since the word of the king is authoritative, who will say to him, what are you doing? He who keeps a royal command experiences no trouble, for a wise heart knows the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every delight, though a man's trouble is heavy upon him. All right, let's break that down just a little bit there, okay? Okay, I love how it talks about how this king took an oath before God, all right? And we all take an oath in the countries that we live in. In America, we call it the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, that is the pledge of citizenship. And I know it's confusing for people who were born in the country to understand that they've taken an oath for that country. Whereas, an immigrant who wants to become a citizen, they go through the test and they have to take an oath. Well, we're born into that oath. And every day we would go to school and we would stand up, we'd put our hand over our hearts and we would say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That is an oath of citizenship. Now the king, the president of the United States, i.e., takes an oath of office, and that oath shows obedience to citizenship. Now we as citizens take an oath to obey that leader. Whether we disagree with the leader or not, we take an oath to obey. Because why? Because God puts the leader in power. I'm sorry, if you're a Republican and Clinton takes office, your duty as an American citizen is to submit and obey Hillary Clinton. And vice versa. If you're a Democrat and Donald Trump takes office, your duty as a citizen of the United States, based on the oath that we took to be obedient to our country, is to follow that man in office. Okay, that's what it means. Now, do we follow them blindly no matter what? No, that's not how it works, because even though the president or the king has absolute authority, he does not have the most high authority, because we believe that God is above him. So, let me put it another way. If the government tells us to disobey God, then we have the right, therefore, to disobey the government. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but we're edging closer and closer and closer to this. Christians view particular things as moral sin. And if the government tells us to violate our belief in God, i.e. commit sin against our God, we then have a duty as Christians to disobey the government. You cannot tell us to accept and believe something that we choose by faith not to accept. That's the other part to this. There's a great verse in the book of Psalms, chapter 11. I think it's near the beginning, around verse 3, and it says this: if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? What it means is this, is obviously America was founded on the belief, on the Judeo-Christian ethic. And I mean, even our Constitution, the preamble to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the laws of the land are based on the Judeo-Christian ethic, thou shalt not. Okay, and when the forefathers founded America, they did it on the basis that God is sovereign over all, and in submission to him, this is how we organize the government. But over the course of the last centuries and decades, the government has systematically eroded the foundations away. The beliefs that we drew the line in the sand on, that we were going to follow this, but the government comes in and they start erasing those lines, saying, no, that's not fair. No, freedom. No, you can't tell us that. I know we were founded on this Judeo-Christian belief, but that's old school. That doesn't apply to us anymore. So we're going to move that line, okay? In Psalm 11, it says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Well, the righteous continue to submit, but the ultimate authority to the righteous is God. Let me read a little bit of it. Following, the Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of man. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked, and the one who loves violence his soul hates. Upon the wicked he will rain snares. Fire and brimstone and burning wind will be the portion of their cup. The Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. The upright will behold his face. Meaning that if the foundations are eroded, we still submit to the one true God, because ultimately he is the authority over the land. We do not let the government tell us or dictate to us that it is better to disobey God than to disobey the government. And let's go check out Romans chapter 13. We'll read a couple verses there and see how this matches up. And this is Paul. And it's amazing how close Romans 13 and Ecclesiastes 8 match up with one another. It says every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities. That means that we submit, whether we like it or not. And think about Paul in his day. I mean, this is the book of Romans. Rome had ultimate control, and Rome was not a Christian nation. They persecuted the Christians unto death. And Paul is telling the people that you will submit to Caesar. It says, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Meaning that God is the one that put these men in power over you. Therefore, you submit to them no matter what. Continuing on, therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God. That for you to rage against the government is, in other words, raging against God's authority over you. And they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. That if you rage against the government that God put in control over you, you will receive due punishment therefore. God's not going to bless you because you think that you're standing up to a tyrannical government, because he's the one that put that tyrant in control over you. Verse 3, for rulers are not the cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Meaning that ultimately, the authority over you is to punish the evil in society. Whether or not they follow what you deem as good or not, they're ultimately there to punish evil. So if you do good, you have no reason to fear them. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. Meaning that just follow the rules, and you'll be okay. Don't rage against the government. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger, who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, what he's saying is this: if you do decide to rage against the machine, if you decide to rage against the government, be afraid, for God did not give the sword of justice to that tyrant or that authoritative government that you disagree with for no reason. He gave them the sword to punish people who walk outside the lines. Verse 5, therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to the very thing, which means that we do not withhold the taxes that we are ordered to pay. You know, God put these men in authority for a reason, and the way that they earn their money is through the taxation of the people. It is not an evil thing to tax the people. Now, of course, there are people who overstretch on this, but by law we must pay our taxes, so pay them what is theirs. Render to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. You guys, I can't beat it down to you enough, and I know in this political season right now, everybody is scared to death about who's going to take office, the Republicans and the Democrats. People don't want Hillary, people don't want Trump, and I can't do anything about it. And what Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and what Romans 13 says is that ultimately God's going to put the person in power who he wants in power. And as citizens of that country, and the oath that you took of citizenship, you are to submit. You are to not rage against the government, but submit to them, because God's the one who put them in control over you. Remembering that a government is better than no government. Now, I'm looking at the time right now and realizing that I'm already 15 minutes into this, and I haven't even touched on the second part of Ecclesiastes chapter 8, okay? I'm going to try just a little bit. You know, verses 7 through 17, if you remember what we talked about, the theme of 7 through 17 is that God controls and will judge all human leaders in government. That if there is an evil leader in power, eventually God will rain judgment down upon them. Now, it may not happen quickly, and that's the thing that gets difficult for people. Let me read it to you. You know how we believe that politicians are above the law? I mean, we're seeing that a lot in the news right now. So look at verse 7. If no one knows what will happen, who can tell him when it will happen? No man has authority to restrain the wind with the wind, or authority over the day of death, and there is no discharge in the time of war, and Evil will not deliver those who practice it. All this I have seen and applied to my mind to every deed that has been done under the sun, wherein a man has exercised authority over another man to his hurt. Meaning that most governments are ungodly. And when one man has control over another man, usually evil shows itself. Okay? In verse 10 it says, "So then I have seen the wicked buried, those who used to go in and out from the holy place, and they are soon forgotten in the city where they did thus. This too is futility, because the sentence against the evil deed is not executed quickly." You know, the further away from God, the further away from justice. That's another way of saying it. "Therefore, the hearts of the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil." Meaning that in a corrupt government, evil can run rampant, but it doesn't mean that we don't submit. "Although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life, still I know that it will be well for those who fear God, who fear him openly." That means that the righteous will live a better life than the evil will, because eventually the evil will be judged. "But it will not be well for the evil man, and he will not lengthen his days like a shadow, because he does not fear God." One day, an evil government and evil ruler will be held accountable for his actions. Verse 14, "There is futility which is done on earth, that is, there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked," meaning that bad things happen to good people. And then on the other hand, it says, "There are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous," meaning that good things happen to evil people. "And I say this too is futility. So I commended pleasure. For there is nothing good for a man under the sun except to eat and drink and to be merry, and this will stand by him through the toils throughout the days of his life which God has given him under the sun." Remember the previous lessons. Enjoy the blessings that God has given you right now. Enjoy your food, your time with your family, your drink. Enjoy the work of your hands. Find rest. Find enjoyment in life. Take your wife out to dinner. Take your kids to a ball game. Enjoy the goodness of God now. Don't worry about an evil government. Submit to the authority, therefore. Only disobey if they cause you to disobey your faith. That's what he's saying right there. And then in verse 16 it says, "When I gave my heart to know wisdom and to see the task which has been done on earth, even though one should never sleep day or night, and I saw every work of God, I concluded that man cannot discover the work which has been done under the sun." That no matter how hard we try, we will never be able to comprehend the mysteries of God, why he does what he does, why he puts people in control who he puts in control. And we're going to stop right there. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I know I was jumping all over the place, and I hope it helps you. Brings you a little bit of clarity and wisdom during this time. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time in your word. I pray, Lord, that the words will penetrate the hearts and minds of the men and the women listening to this, and that it gives them hope in the days to come. May we find rest in you, and may you be glorified in your heavenly and holy name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Friendly counter UAV inbound.